Okay, so I figure we'll get started with introductions. Um, I'm Anastacia. I'm a parent educator with the Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, and I am joined with Brittany. Um, and then we're also joined here today with Katie, who is going to talk to us a little bit about Family Support Network and tell us a little bit about herself and her agency, and then we're going to get started.
Hi everyone. My name is Katie Davis. I work with Family Support Network of North Carolina. I personally am located in Asheville with the Western North Carolina branch. However, we do have affiliates across the state of North Carolina, and we provide free support services to families and guardians and trusted adults of children with unique healthcare needs. So that could look like referrals, helping with service navigation, and then we also have a parent mentoring program. And we're really excited to host this presentation from ECAC.
We're excited to be here. Brittany, did you want to introduce yourself more than the one sentence line I gave you?
Sure. So thank you all for joining us tonight. And thank you, Katie, for having us again. My name is Brittany Cutshaw. I worked in the role alongside Anastacia for a while as a parent educator with ECAC for the past 2 years. And I just recently rolled over into a different position, still at ECAC, working on the North Carolina Deafblind Project, which you'll hear a few more sentences about that in the next few moments. And I think we're going to go ahead and get started with learning just a little bit more about what programs ECAC has to offer.
Okay, so ECAC is a private nonprofit parent organization that is committed to improving the lives and education of all children. But we do have a special emphasis on children with disabilities and special healthcare needs. We serve as North Carolina's Parent Training and Information Center. And that means that we help families navigate early intervention, special education, the transition to adulthood. We provide a variety of individual assistance as well as webinars, fact sheets, those types of things. Every parent educator here is a parent of a child with disabilities. Some of us have very young children. My son is 3, while others of us have adult children. Um, we are always happy to work with families to provide them with the information and resources to make informed decisions, communicate effectively, as well as just work to become their child's best advocate in school, community, and life. You don't know what you don't know, and so we like to help families know everything that they can know because we know you guys are their best advocates.
So alongside our PTI, we also serve as North Carolina's F2F, or Family to Family Health Information Center. Our F2F is funded by the Health Resources and Services Administration, also known as HRSA. In addition to helping families navigate the special education system, we also specialize in helping families navigate health-related systems in North Carolina. Similarly to the PTI, each F2F is staffed by highly skilled, knowledgeable family members who actually have firsthand experience and understand those challenges faced by families of children with children and youth with special healthcare needs in the health system specifically.
We serve all 100 counties, and all of our services to families are provided at no cost, you guys. Um, so we like to work with a lot of different people, and we get a lots of different kinds of questions. Okay.
So I'll start by telling you a little bit about our Achieve program. This is a new program to ECAC. Some of you may know about our STAR program, which recently rolled into a different name that's going to be called Achieve, but similarly, our Achieve program will provide virtual pre-employment transition services to students with disabilities aged 14 to 21 across our state, including students who attend public schools, charter schools, and even those who are homeschooled. Classes will include self-advocacy, job exploration, workplace readiness, and financial literacy. All courses are designed to help prepare students for a bright future beyond high school. And coming down here to where we're talking about the North Carolina Deafblind Project, ECAC works in collaboration with NCDPI and Eastern Carolina University to provide a variety of supports and services designed to meet the needs of families of children with deafblindness ages birth to 22 and those who educate them, including teachers and service providers. The North Carolina Deafblind Project provides individualized support, education, and leadership development. Anastacia?
So in addition to that, we work with the North Carolina State Improvement Project. This is also known as NC-SIP, and they work to improve the quality and effectiveness of educational programming and instruction for students with disabilities in North Carolina. We also have a contract with the Office of Exceptional Children at DPI, where we work to create resources and provide trainings to families and professionals. In addition to that, we do have a handful of local, statewide, and national short-term funded projects. That's a mouthful, you guys, that we partner on that align with our mission. So we like to be out in our community doing a lot of stuff. Okay, so I want to get us started here with you telling me what your biggest concern is about returning to school. So you just use your phone to hover over that QR code and tell me what your biggest concern is. I forget you guys can't see the QR code if I'm looking at the results, huh? So, if you cannot use the QR code because you don't have your phone or whatever, or you don't have power, you can put yours in the chat. That's totally okay. What is your biggest concern? My kiddo actually goes back to school on Monday, you guys. I don't know when your kiddos go back, but mine goes on Monday. And one of my biggest concerns is I've already gotten calls from all of his service providers with varying information that is not all the same. And I'm super confused about when we're actually starting his services because they were giving me different dates and times. Schedule changes, that is a huge one. So let's look at some of the other answers you guys came up with. A lack of empathy. That's really hard to navigate. And building strong relationships with your school and your team members helps. But obviously, we're all people and we can't control how other people interact. We can offer compassion where it's appropriate, and we can share a little bit of ourselves with them, but that is a really difficult one to navigate. Communication is such a huge issue for everybody, right? And some years you're going to have great communication, and other years it might have harder times with those communication aspects. But having something like a communication log or a specific plan on how you're going to communicate is super great. Bullying, that is certainly a big concern for a lot of people. Transitioning is hard, whether it's between classes, new schools, we just having moved, having a new baby. Life transitions are hard. They're hard for adults, so they're certainly hard for kids. Same thing with new staff and teachers. Middle schoolers, you are right. My son is only 3, and the amount of attitude he has at 3 is scary. I can't imagine having a middle schooler. Brittany, do you have a middle schooler right now?
I have 2.
How's that going?
I'm scared. That's one of my concerns too. Whoever put that in there, I definitely empathize with you. I'm right there with you. Middle school
I
is a scary place.
Safety, we see in the chat safety. So safety and bullies, go hand in hand, and I think that no matter where your kid is, you're gonna have concerns about safety. Working with your IEP team to talk about those concerns and your teacher, building those strong relationships so that you can have those kinds of tough conversations. Like if your kiddo likes to elope, how are we going to handle that? What are we going to put in place to make sure that we are keeping our kiddos safe as possible? If your kiddo likes to climb on top of shelves, same thing. What are we going to do to keep our kiddos safe? What are we going to use to teach those interventions to make sure that my kiddo is safe, happy, and successful? I like how we all have similar concerns.
Yeah, I think that was a really helpful activity to understand that we all can probably find some common ground moving forward. And so I think now it's time to redirect and look at what we're really planning on learning today. School is just around the corner, and some of the objectives that we're going to be learning about today are tips and tricks for returning to school or starting school if you haven't done that yet. Ideas for managing data, IEPs, paperwork, and making sure your kiddo is on a pathway to success, and some ways that parents can support that success at home. Tips and tricks for what to do if things are not going well or if you do have a concern, and how to navigate that.
Okay, so let's get started, you guys. So, one of the first things that we're going to do is we're going to look at some resources that can help support you this school year. So, this is one of my favorite resources. It's called Painting the Big Picture. And basically, it's a get to know you for your child's teacher, but it also serves for providers too. And there's a lot of great information here that you can give them because it's just not, you can't be at school all day with them to share this information. So by preparing this information ahead of time, you can give it to the new teachers, the new providers, and it will help them, one, to build a better relationship with your kiddo, but it also helps them to have some strategies even when they're first meeting your kiddo that can be successful so that your kiddo, the therapist and your kiddo can start out on a really good note. So in this right corner, you can put your kiddo's picture. That's always helpful because sometimes, service providers are walking into classrooms of 20 and 30 kids and they're just having to call out a name to figure out who they're seeing. So putting your kiddo's picture here is very helpful. And then this first part talks about um you just describe your kiddo. Share what they're interested in. Is your kiddo really motivated by bubbles? Is your kiddo really motivated by trains? Is your kiddo going to really dislike activities related to pizza? I feel like pizza is probably not a great example of a dislike, but whatever they like and dislike. And then share some tips and tricks with those providers on how they're going to build good relationships with your kiddo. And thinking about that, what would prevent them from having a good relationship with your kiddo? We all know our kiddos like the back of our hand, and we know that certain things really bother them. So put that in here. The next part talks about strengths and successes. So here you're going to talk about what is your child really good at, both in the home setting and then also out of school. And then any strategies that can help them to be successful. If your kiddo is really responsive to a sticker chart, put that. If your kiddo is super successful with the visual schedule, add that information here so that your kiddo can start off on their best note. This next section is challenges. What is your kiddo struggling with? What do they have a hard time with? What are your biggest concerns? Um, you can put, this is your form. You can put whatever you want to in here. But also think about what helps with addressing those challenges. If you know that your kiddo has a hard time with transitioning from one activity to another, what helps? Does like a song transition help? Does a timer help? Does a visual schedule help? What works for you? It may not work for them, but it gives them a place to start as they're getting to know your child. The next section is dreams and vision. This first part says, what do you want to see in this next year? What are your hopes and dreams? What are you hoping they're going to accomplish? And then long term, right? Because we're building something that's going to last, lifelong. We want our kiddos to be as independent as possible. What does that look like? What is your hopes for your kiddo? And this just helps teachers and practitioners to plan because they know where your hopes and dreams lie so that they can create, goals that are going to be stepping stones to get us there. And then other helpful information, this is any healthcare needs, dietary needs, anything like that, any calming strategies that work. But my favorite section is this very last section. You can have your child's current private providers or current teachers or even family members give tips and tricks for things that are working. You can have a private provider, right? We are working on X, Y, and Z, and we are using these interventions, and this is how it's going. Or we could say, you can have an OT say, we have tried this method. It's not successful because X, Y, and Z. And it helps to let them know what's already been tried. It also gives a chance, for other family members to have, a voice and get to say something about this kiddo, which is always, super helpful and fun. Okay, so the second resource, we're not going to go through this one because obviously it's 149 pages, but we do want to share it with you. So when you guys go to IEP meetings, if your child has an IEP, they give you the Handbook of Rights, which is super important. But the Duke Law Children's Clinic further broke that down to make it a little bit more reader friendly for families and really define different terms. It is a super helpful resource just to keep on hand. And what I really like is their table of contents is just clickable. You just click and it navigates you to where you want to go. And it is much more searchable. It's just more friendly. And so this is a resource we really want you to have so that you can make sure that when you do have questions, you have a resource available to easily answer, easily access that information at the tip of your fingers. And then Brittany is going to talk to us a little bit about this resource.
So I think one of our favorite quotes at ECAC is, "You don't know what you don't know." And that's what we really hope to be there for you guys, to help remedy that and be a support to you in all of those challenges, like we mentioned before, what our concerns are about this upcoming school year. And one of the biggest concerns and most daunting topics can be the IEP meeting. And sometimes you don't know what's going to come up in that IEP meeting. If you're newer to the IEP, you might not be very familiar with what the process should look like or what you can ask for. IEP checklist is one of my favorite things to give to parents prior to the meetings, even if you've had an IEP for a while, because it helps you to be able to keep your thoughts focused and organized so that you come to that meeting prepared with an approach. So we're going to just flip through this quickly. Many of you may have seen this form before, and excuse me if I look to the side because I need to see it just a little bit bigger. So before the IEP meeting, these are some things that we can consider. Does the purpose of this meeting make sense to you, and does it match what you expect? You should have had time in advance to be able to view the invitation to your child's meeting and be able to correspond with the team and make sure that the date, time, and location are appropriate for you with consideration to how urgent it is for the team to meet, and if all of the required members are going to be there. You may not be able to answer all of these questions fully, but this should stand as a pretty straightforward guideline of some considerations before things get started. Organizing and reviewing. So before you go to the meeting, it is really important to review your child's records to get a very solid understanding of where things stand right now before any changes are made, so that you'll be able to come prepared with any questions that you may have. So where has your child made progress? What are they lacking? What are some areas that you would like the IEP to address? Where are some areas that progress did not happen? And how can the next IEP address that area? Have you heard from your child? Did you hear anything from your child or a service provider that's not going well that could be improved with the IEP? And then what challenges do you anticipate over the next 12 months? So it's important to remember that the annual review should stand as the annual meeting for your child's IEP. But if something does come up during that 12 months, because that is quite a long period of time, there's always an opportunity to call another meeting. So understanding the purpose of the meeting is important. Is this an annual review? Is this to review the results of evaluations? Is this an addendum meeting? Those types of things. So the document that Anastacia just shared with you would be a great opportunity to review special education basics. And considering that that's relatively larger document, using the Control F feature to find certain topics that apply to you, glancing at it, or even just reading through the table of contents to get an idea of what those basics of special education are, so that you understand more about your rights as a parent. Another step in that preparation stage really is showing up for meetings like this, because you might learn about a topic that you never really would have thought about to consider that'll end up helping your child in their IEP meeting. There's a variety of ways to share what you know about your child. I like that we mentioned ECAC is painting the big picture here as well. I personally think that that document is such a creative and friendly way to be proactive. And we always encourage parents to be as proactive as possible when it comes to sharing information with the IEP team. The more better communication that you can establish from the beginning, it will help you to develop stronger relationships throughout the school year. I want to stop here before we get too far to look at share what's on your mind too. I know Anastacia and I talk from time to time about creating a meeting agenda that lists your concerns, questions, and priorities. While it may not always be possible to create your own agenda, being able to see the school's agenda and provide your input to make sure that there's an opportunity for your concerns to be heard is also really important. Step 2, the IEP meeting. So a lot of work goes on, maybe prior to the meeting, whether that means calling ECAC, being informed about your rights, but now at this point, you're finally here and you're at the meeting. And a lot of dynamic happens during the meeting. I think it is really important to clarify and understand who each person is and what their role is at the meeting. You may not be able to remember that off the top of your head, so it's not uncommon to bring a notepad and just jot down some names, what people's roles are, and also what your thoughts are as people start responding to your question. And taking notes is a completely appropriate thing to do during an IEP meeting. One thing that we always like to encourage is the intent to find common ground. So we want to assume the best and positive intentions of all members of the team whenever possible. We might not agree with them 100% when it comes to making decisions about what our child needs, what those goals should look like, or what the day-to-day schedule looks like. But when major concerns come up, it's always helpful if you can try to find common ground. And always support your child to participate if they are able to do so and if they're willing to come to those meetings. It's great to encourage their self-advocacy starting at a very young age so that they can understand that the IEP process is a process there to support them. We want to remind you to take a break if necessary. You can always take a break if you need to gather your thoughts, calm your emotions, call a friend, or even just step out to grab some water so that you can maintain your focus through the meeting, because it can become rather lengthy. All right. So when we get down towards the end of the meeting, something that's really important is to review the prior written notice. I can't emphasize this enough. And I think, in the role of parent educator, we always try to encourage parents to review the prior written notice. That document does hold a lot of weight. And a lot of parents don't know that if you review the prior written notice and find errors or something that was not documented correctly, you will have the opportunity to ask the team to amend it or fix the prior written notice so that it's something the whole team agrees upon, that it is what actually happened in the meeting. And so you just want to make sure that that document reflects the decisions that were actually made during that meeting. And whenever possible, try to do that before the conclusion of the meeting. From time to time, they'll allow you time to review that after the meeting before signing it, but it's easier if any changes need to be made if you can do it while the team's all together. And then, of course, we want to keep the communication going, and it is really friendly and a good way to establish that positive communication to send a thank you message to the folks for joining the meeting, for spending time and really caring about your child's progress and their future. But overall, this document stands as a positive checklist just to make sure that your thoughts are aligned and in order before you enter the meeting, and may remind you of anything that you may have forgotten to consider, because time passes between these meetings. But hopefully with these steps and preparations, it will help to build and maintain these positive relationships that are what we strive for.
Thank you, Brittany. Okay, so as we head back to school, we wanted to talk about some things you can do to prepare your kiddos. Um, You can use visual supports. These are like images. You can take a picture of the school and show them to introduce, hey, we are going back to school. Remember, this is what school looks like. Or if you have a picture of their teacher, hey, this is Miss So and so. This is Miss Cutshaw, and this is who you're going to see. I'm so excited for you to get to meet her. Take the time to visit the school if you can and walk the hallways, go to open house, help them feel like this is a comfortable, familiar space. It's not new, it's not scary. We've visited with our parents before. This is a place that we've been, we understand it, and we're not so scared. And this will give you comfort too, as a parent, to be familiar with where they're going, know where things are. Um, and it makes it feel like it's a more controlled experience. And read stories, you guys. So there are so many books about back to school for older kids and for younger kids. Um, and I read one though where it said all the parents cried, and I thought that was hilarious, right? Because sometimes going to kindergarten is sad, you guys. Your babies go to kindergarten, they're growing up. Who told them they could do that, right? But read the stories, get them used to the idea of going to school, especially if you have a kiddo that hasn't been to school or been in an environment like that, so that we can make sure that they're able to adjust well to this new environment.
Is it okay to cry when they go to middle school too? Or is it too late for that?
I think it's okay to cry anytime.
Always okay to cry, Brittany.
It's okay to cry. Something else we want you guys to think about is when you have kiddos with special needs, organization is super important. You get a ton of paperwork, you get evaluations, you get data, you get progress notes, but it's really important that you keep that. While I hope that nobody here has to pursue their dispute resolution options. The reality is that it does happen, and you need to have that paper, you need to have it in writing. It also allows you to see their progress over time, um, so that you can track what's happening. And there's a couple ways you can do this. Obviously, you can keep it all. You can put it all in binders or folders. After this presentation tomorrow, when we send you a follow-up email, I'm going to send you an article on one of the ways you could organize a binder to be served this purpose. You could also have digital notebooks where you upload all of the virtual documents into a Google Drive folder so that they're all in one place. That's super helpful for your own purposes, because it's unlikely to be lost if it's on Google Drive. It's also helpful if you're contacting anybody for any individual support and you're talking about something specific in the document, because sometimes it's easier if you can show us exactly where it is in your document or what your concerns are. It's also helpful when you're looking at their progress and you say, I think he's had this goal 2 years ago. What happened? It gives you that paper that you can go back and take a look at. Um, and also make sure that you're looking at your progress notes and that they include the data. We see a lot of progress notes that are super nice and tell us how great our kiddo is. Uh, but we want more than surface level commentary. We want to see the data. How many times are they doing this? Because how are you going to know how they're doing in comparison to their goal if you can't see the data? And 3 out of 5 times my child did this. Um, just saying, I had one this past year that said, Alexander is very sweet. He enjoys reading stories. Well, his goal is not the goal that was written for, has nothing to do with reading stories, and the fact that he likes them isn't super helpful, right? I can't use that data to plan anything. I could have told them that, 2 years ago, that he likes to read stories. So make sure that you're looking at the documentation that you're provided, and looking at the data, because that's going to help you be a full participant in your IEP meetings, because you can say, I'm looking at the progress note and I'm seeing that you're saying that no progress has been made. We need to reevaluate. Is this goal appropriate? Are the services appropriate? What interventions we're using? We'll talk a little bit more about data in a minute, but all of those things rely on you keeping up with all of the paperwork that they like to give you. We know that change is difficult and preparing early helps you. to be the best advocate you can be. So we're going to look at these very briefly. These are our fact sheets on the transition to preschool and the transition to kindergarten. So when you're looking at kiddos who are turning 3 and they're transitioning to preschool, if they're involved in early intervention, they're going to refer them to the school district to be evaluated for special education services. Now, the criteria for early intervention and special education are different. So not every kiddo that has early intervention is going to need an IEP. That's why it's really important that we go through this process and make sure that we're setting our kids up for success. And so then they're going to do a referral meeting. They're going to refer, they're going to have a referral meeting. The team is going to talk about what data they have already, what strengths that kiddo has, what the challenges are. And as a team, and you guys are part of the team, you're going to decide whether evaluations are necessary to determine whether that kiddo is eligible for an IEP. So after evaluations are complete, and some districts will do this on the same day as the referral meeting. So after the evaluations are done, they're going to have an eligibility meeting and they're going to review all of the evaluations. They're going to look at the worksheets that you guys decided. You're going to look at, so every category, there's 14 disabling categories, and every category has its own worksheet with its own requirements for what data is needed to qualify under that category. And so at the eligibility meeting, they're going to look at those worksheets. And as a team, you guys are going to determine yes or no to eligibility. If a child is eligible, then we're going to write an IEP. We're going to write an individualized education program. So at that point, when a kiddo is 3, we're going to start with the public school district if we have an IEP. Services look very different for every child, you guys. So some kiddos will get drop-in. They just need 30 minutes a week of speech. Other kids are going to need more robust services. It is meant to be individualized, and every child is going to get something different. Another thing to mention is North Carolina has a 3-prong eligibility process, which includes not only that we have a disability, but also that we require special education and specially designed instruction. We have to see that it is affecting their access and attainment of education in the general curriculum. Okay, Brittany, are you ready?
Yes, I am. So a lot goes on in that tight timeline during those preschool years. And, many of the students may have been involved in early intervention or preschool services, and some may or may not have had that experience yet when you get to the kindergarten stage. And so when you are preparing and getting ready to go into kindergarten, maybe you are coming from preschool services, or maybe you're not, but once your child gets to gets to the kindergarten age, if you feel like you do have concerns and you haven't had those experiences yet, now may be a good time to initiate the special education referral if you haven't had that process get started yet. So during the transition to kindergarten, there is still a lot of prep and planning that can be done to help your child be successful in kindergarten, and also help you understand as a parent what to expect. Contacting your local school district and IEP case manager prior to the enrollment, prior to the start of school, is really helpful to get an idea of what that timeline should look like, if there's any additional meetings or paperwork that you may need to fill out in regards to the IEP, and seeing what the elementary school is going to need for your child, because sometimes there's going to be different types of documentation that they need depending on what your child's needs are. Gathering information about your child that you might want to share with your IEP team, knowing that the IEP team is going to be different than it was at the preschool level. And we reflect back on what some of those modalities are. If you don't want to use the resources that ECAC has to share, a simple email can definitely suffice about sharing what your child's strengths and challenges are. And, I know we're talking about kindergarten right now, and maybe some of these forms aren't applicable to those of us who have older kiddos. But sending an email to the teachers prior to their original start date of school can be really helpful, regardless of what the age is. So we want to review any medical documentation, diagnosis paperwork, and what those medication needs are going to be with the upcoming school year. Over the summer, sometimes we take the time to go to more appointments and those orders can change. So we want to make sure that all records are up to date. Um, and then I'm going to scroll down just to the start of the second page here, Anastacia. Thank you. Here are some questions that you may consider asking your child's IEP team. Consider what might go well this year, what might be challenging for your child, and what can be done ahead of time to make this transition go smoothly. I know for me personally, kindergarten was sort of like the great unknown. We were kind of taking that step out into this gray area that I really knew nothing about when it came to the IEP, what to expect, what kinds of services that were going to be offered. It is a really big difference from the preschool setting. So here are some examples of things that you can do to help yourself as a parent feel more secure. Being educated about your rights and looking back over the parent rights handbook, using Control F to find some terms that maybe weren't as relevant at the preschool level, like least restrictive environment, placement, and those types of things. Families can also prepare their children by doing things simple as role play, playing videos or reading books, like Anastacia has mentioned before. I know with us, once we visited the school for Meet Your Teacher, they offered us a lot of books about going to kindergarten for the first time, but sometimes those aren't always available. If you need other types of resources like that, then you can definitely reach out to ECAC for those types of supports. And you will be provided with these forms as well that offer a couple of different resources for parents to reach out to for more information.
So some of the other ways, we've talked about a few ways that you guys can get your kiddos ready for preschool or kindergarten, but some other ideas include practice lining up. Kids have to walk all over the school these days. So practice lining up. Lining up is a skill that has to be taught. Go ahead and show them pictures. Practice, especially if you have a couple of kids and you can make a real line, go ahead and practice that at home. About a week before school, practice getting up early. So you're not the night before school is the first night I'm getting up at 6 o'clock to catch my bus. Go ahead and practice so that you're on that schedule when school starts. We already talked about, a big proponent of reading books about going to preschool, going to kindergarten, and there are a ton of them. Most of them are available like in story time groups on YouTube as well, so that you don't have to buy them. We talked about pictures of teachers before, but also, if possible, when you send that email ahead of time, and you get their service provider names, ask for a picture so that you can introduce your kiddo. Some kiddos do really well if they're given a picture and able to picture, like, oh, this is my speech therapist. I recognize them. Now I'm not going to be, scared when they come to get me, because they won't be a stranger. So those are all things that can be helpful. And the same thing with the bus. Show them a picture. You can't, I mean, I know you can't put them on a school bus to practice, but show them a picture. Say, we're going to get up at this time. This is where we're going to wait. You can practice that routine. We're going to wait here for the bus. And then when you get home, I'll be right here. Definitely reassure them, especially if you have young kids, that I'm going to be right here. Obviously, for older kiddos, you know your kiddo best and whether that's something they would respond to. There are also social stories available about, I'm going to school today. I need to get ready. And you can even make your own social story by making them very personalized and using pictures of your kiddo getting ready, saying, I need to do X, Y, and Z before I get ready for school, just to help them prepare.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think too, I'd like to add that I think the sleep schedule is a huge component, at least for us at our house. I have heard research that says it would take almost 2 weeks to fall back into the swing of things. So we might be even a little bit behind the ball game there, but getting back into those routines can be so difficult after 2 or 3 months of getting to relax just a little bit. So falling back into the routine of actually waking up and having to get ready and eat breakfast in a timely manner, so that on that first day, it's not as stressful as it could be.
okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about data. I want to ask you guys a question. Put your answer in the chat. Why is data important? Is it A, because it measures progress? B, because it determines goals? C, because it determines extended school year? Or D, all of the above? You guys want me to play Jeopardy music while we wait? I can hum with the best of them.
Hey, we're getting some good answers. It looks like there's almost a consensus. Okay, so you guys are correct. The answer is all of the above. And I think at this point, we all recognize data is incredibly important. The information that we get through data is used to make decisions about placement, goals, services, etc. And reviewing that data gives you the same information that's available to the rest of the team. It also allows for you to be on the same page as them and recognize where both the strengths and the weaknesses are, as well as what it's going to take to bridge that gap and how to get to the next step for your child.
And we didn't explain, but it might be a good idea to talk about ESY for a second, you guys. So when you guys are in IEP meetings, extended school year is always discussed at least once a year at annual reviews. And ESY is not meant to make progress. It is a summer program where kiddos get service so they can stay at the same level. These are kids who have shown that they demonstrate regression or that they have demonstrated that they have a critically developing skill. Like if for example, it was March, school is almost out, and a kiddo suddenly starts to talk. We might think that we're in a critical window where if they don't have services over the summer, we might lose that, and we might consider extended school year there. And there's a lot of data searching and reviewing when we're looking at extended school year. But some of the biggest times and the places you want to look at whether there's regression without reasonable recoupment. And what that means is, you know, every child is going to lose some over the summer, but do they regain it in a reasonable amount of time? If your kiddo is out of school for the summer and they come back and it takes them 12 to 20 weeks to regain those skills, we might say that's an unreasonable amount of time. That's concerning. But some of the biggest times you want to look for gathering that data, if you suspect that that is the case for your kiddo, is after summer and then Christmas and spring break. If my kid is out of the routine over Christmas break, if they miss those two after those 2 weeks of school or winter break, if they miss those 2 weeks of school and they come back and it takes them 8 weeks to get back to where they were, then those would be conversations that you would want to have. And that's one place where data is super important. And you want to make sure that the staff that you're working with and the therapists and the teachers are collecting that data, that data is there for you guys to review at the annual review. Okay, so if I have a concern, what should I do? You should call a meeting. Now that's obvious, like if you have an IEP concern or even a 504 concern, there are some concerns that you would go directly to a teacher about. For example, some of you were concerned about bullying. If I was concerned that my child was being bullied, I might start with the teacher and then proceed from there. But if I have concerns about the IEP, I'm concerned they're not making adequate progress. I'm concerned that their service delivery is not enough, or I'm concerned that they need more, or that there's an area that we've missed. I'm going to call a meeting. And if you do have a meeting coming up, you're going to want to write out your concerns ahead of time, as well as your vision statement, and go ahead and email those to the teacher and ask them to put it in the IEP document as written. This does two things. One, this gives you time to write everything that you want to say rather than being put on the spot in the meeting. But it also allows the team to know, these are my concerns. This is where I want to see my child. This is the growth I'm hoping for. This is where I want them to be. And they can use that information to help them plan. You can also, when you provide that list, say, you know, these are some solutions I've come up with. These are some interventions that I think will work, or even my private provider is trying this and this seems to be really helpful. Could we try this? Safety. If you have safety concerns, please bring it up with your team. Ask what the policies are, what they are doing to help support those kiddos, how they're going to keep them safe. Um, it is essential, right, that we feel like we can trust people to keep our kiddos safe. And so if those are concerns you have due to specific behaviors, go ahead and ask. And the same thing, if you read a goal and it's confusing, go ahead and ask, what do you mean? What skill are we trying to teach and how are you going to teach it? Ask all of the clarifying questions so that you feel comfortable and you understand what the goal of the goal is. What is the intent behind the goal? What skill are we trying to master? How will we know they've mastered it? And how are we going to get there? What research-based intervention are we going to use to teach that skill?
So, what I have come to realize and want to leave with you guys is understanding that communication is a two-way street. And we know in order for IEP teams to reach a consensus, or even outside of the IEP team, if there's any concerns that come up, like bullying, or other concerns that parents have about their children going to school, it can be very, very emotionally taxing for parents to experience this and know how to navigate trying to fix things with a school or make way for success. So, one key to remember about the communication is you want to be mindful of where your emotional pressure gauge is as you work with your child's school, because working with them, of course, is the goal that we have in mind, but using functional communication as that two-way street to get to where you're trying to go is really important for making success happen. We're going to take a quick look at one of our resources that we really like called Talk Tools. Um, and it is pretty handy when it comes to thinking about having successful conversations with your child's school and staying solution oriented. So here are some questions that you can equip yourself with when it comes to starting a new conversation with staff at your child's school, depending on what issues may arise from time to time. So you may select any question that relates best to your child's current situation. And if you need to kind of adapt or fix the wording to something that feels comfortable to you. But consider these questions and how they may lead to getting a better answer from staff. We like to lead with an open-ended question that will give the team the opportunity to give you as much information as they can, and also understand that as a parent and a member of the team, you're trying to find common ground for success for your child. So, thinking about starting a new conversation, would you be willing to help me think about ways to help my child? Well, we're asking these questions so that hopefully we can achieve a yes answer from staff. If you achieve a yes answer, then you can move from that point and move forward to open the conversation further. And hopefully, you guys will be able to find common ground. What are we hoping to learn or accomplish by doing this? Sometimes there's confusion about what the goal of the goal is. I liked how Anastacia put that, but really, what is the intention behind the goal? Are we hoping to learn something through this that I, as a parent, am not aware of? And asking these types of questions to the team is a really good approach because it's an open-minded approach that will help them to not feel targeted, but feel more comfortable with responding to you, while also keeping your emotions at bay just enough to have a successful conversation. Some questions for problem solving. What has already been tried and what hasn't already been tried? Sometimes we have one specific function in mind that we want our child to be able to achieve, and we believe wholeheartedly that they'll be able to do that. And while the team may have similar opinions as you, or maybe even different opinions, trying to remember that we may all be trying to get to the same place, but have different ways of getting there is really important when moving forward with the team. So asking questions like, in what specific circumstances or environment did you try this, or will you try this? One thing that we like to suggest for parents to understand and bring with them to their meeting is the hope that the IEP team may be willing to consider a contingency plan. If there is a disagreement and the parent has a thought in mind that's say for instance, an intervention that they want to try or a goal that they feel their child really could be working on, but the school isn't open to trying it. Maybe it's even a different type of assistive technology that they haven't tried yet, or a placement decision, for instance, as well. There's a variety of different circumstances that this could apply. Maybe even a different type of accommodation that hasn't been used yet. What has been used in the past? How did that turn out? And what haven't you tried yet? And if you have something in mind that you feel like you're getting a little bit of pushback about, I would encourage you to ask the school for a contingency plan and see if you might be able to try that specific item for a period of time just to collect data and see how it was effective, if it was effective, if not, and why. One thing that we like to remind you too is, like, with the two-way street of communication, that comes with active listening. Sometimes before entering meetings like this as parents, it can be difficult if you don't have much experience with being an active listener. I think I mentioned something about taking notes in the past. It's a little bit of a different scenario if you haven't been to a meeting and feel like you have to take notes, and it may feel a little bit out of your comfort zone. But actively listening and making sure that you actually understand what the other person is saying and asking questions for clarification whenever you feel fuzzy or confused about something will help you have a more thorough understanding and hopefully be able to see things from the other person's perspective. And at the end of the day, we want to recognize that we're only human, and so are the other members of our team. So we do the best that we can to try and assume positive intent. Okay.
That is so important, you guys, to start from a framework where you're believing that the other person is working for the benefit of your child and that they have the best intentions. Because if we can start with our communication building with believing that we are working towards a common goal, then we can work together to collaborate better. I want you to remember that collaboration doesn't always mean that everybody is happy when they leave. Sometimes we're all gonna have to compromise or try new ideas, or sometimes they're gonna wanna try something that maybe we don't agree with, and sometimes we're gonna wanna try something that maybe they're not in agreement with, and we can work together to find a solution, or we can try a solution that's offered. But we are just human, and we're not gonna get along all the time, and that's okay. It's about making sure that we're able to communicate when it's hard. Um, so if things are continuing to not be well, what are we going to do? So obviously, we are going to hope, that if you're having concerns that you have talked to your teacher. Um, or if depending on what your concern is, sometimes you're going to want to talk to your IEP team. If you're continuing to have concerns, talk to the district office, contact the EC director. You also have your dispute resolution options, and these include state complaints, facilitated meetings, mediation, and due process. So, the facilitated meetings, you guys, are where a non-biased party is present in the meeting, and they are not a part of the team. They are not a part of the decision-making process, but what they do is promote communication. They make sure that people are heard and have an opportunity to talk. Um, when you believe there's a violation, you can file a state complaint. The state then has 60 days to investigate and then offer their findings. If you are having issues at your school and you guys need help navigating these systems, you guys can 100% contact us. You guys are going to get a copy of this presentation, and right there where it says parent educators is our linked parent educator form, and it will connect you directly to one of our parent educators to get individualized support. So we have So it's time for questions, and we're certainly open to questions. But as you guys are thinking of your questions, we are federally funded, and part of being federally funded is that they like to know how we're doing. So while you guys are thinking of your questions, we're gonna launch our poll, and if you guys will fill that out. One of the things I love about our poll, you guys, is at the very bottom is an open-ended question where you guys can actually you can put anything, but I'd love it if you guys would offer some suggestions for topics you guys want to see, because we do take that into consideration when we're planning webinars. Does anybody have any questions or any burning concerns that they would like to share with the class while we're getting ready for school to start?
DT, if you wouldn't mind to type your question out, and if you need for some reason to verbalize whatever questions that you have, let me know, and I may be able to allow people to come on. It'll just take me a few extra moments. And at this time, we only have a few members who have filled out our poll. So please don't forget before you exit to do that for us. Our funders really would like to see how we're doing and see if this information was useful to you guys. Well, and I am also extremely grateful to all of you guys for showing up tonight. I know that the weather across the state was less than ideal, and many of our friends may or may not have power tonight. We have been recording this webinar, so we will send it out in our follow-up email along with some additional resources that we mentioned throughout our presentation.
So you should be able to request the data from your team. And then if you're having trouble with that, that would be a time where you could contact an EC director to request copies of the data. We're supposed to be making data-driven decisions. And part of making data-driven decisions means that we are having the data. You can't make database decisions if there's no data to be had. So you need to have access to the data. And then when you go to the IEP meetings, it was totally okay to say, hey, can you guys show me the data? I see you're saying that we're not making progress in this one area. Can you can you show me the data that shows that? Or you guys are saying that he's struggling in this. Can I see the data that backs that up? And if you're continuing to have that trouble, definitely feel free to reach out to one of our parent educators and we can help you kind of navigate that.
And Anastacia, I just wanted to hop on that and maybe correct me if I'm wrong. I do think you also can ask for that data slightly ahead of time. Part of your parental rights is that you have time to look at that. I do think that that's a great way to help yourself document and show your communication is emailing ahead of time and being like, I really would like to be informed for this meeting. Please provide me with data ahead of time. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. And I think you should. I think you should actually request drafts and copies of evaluations ahead of time anyway, because some people need time to read and understand what is being shared with them and have time to digest and form their questions. That's totally okay. I did want to share really quick before people hop off, because I saw that there were a couple people who had concerns about bullying. Our Tool Time Tuesday on Tuesday is called Join the Battle Against Bullying, and it's going to be it's just 12 to 12:30, and they're going to talk about bullying. So if you guys want to register for that, we'll make sure to include that link in our follow-up email. There's also, and then coming up later this month, we have some transition to adulthood webinars that are coming. And then I think the last question that we have in the chat, I think would be best if you contact one of our parent educators and we can help you navigate that specific concern. I think so there is a law called FERPA that it talks about how long schools have to provide data when it's requested. And we can provide you a copy of that, and we can discuss those implications specifically about your kiddo. We want to thank you guys all for coming. We really appreciate it. Katie, did you want to say anything else before we leave?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you guys. I appreciate all your support and continuing to provide the education.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you guys, and we appreciate you guys coming with us today in this rainy weather and joining us anyway. Be on the lookout. We have a IEP effective practices at the end of the month, and we've got some other really good webinars coming up. So we'll make sure to include the event link so that you guys can take a look at that. Okay. I hope you guys all have a great night. Thank you guys.
Thank you.